Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. On November 22nd, 1963, the streets of Dallas were alive with excitement. Crowds lined the motorcade route, waving as President John F. Kennedy's open-top limousine made its way through Dealey Plaza. Then, in an instant, history changed forever. Gunshots rang out. The president slumped forward. First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy reached for him in horror. Moments later, John F. Kennedy, the young, charismatic leader of the United States, was pronounced dead. JFK's presidency was one of fear, hope, and ambition. He led the nation through tense Cold War conflicts, from the Cuban Missile Crisis to the escalating situation in Vietnam. He championed civil rights, calling for an end to segregation. His vision for the future, symbolized by the promise to land a man on the moon, inspired millions. But his time in office was tragically cut short, leaving the country in shock and raising questions that have never been fully answered. In the hours following the assassination, a suspect was quickly arrested: Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine with ties to communism. Authorities declared that he acted alone, firing 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. But from the very beginning, doubts emerged. Witnesses claimed they heard shots from multiple directions. The sudden murder of Oswald just 2 days later by nightclub owner Jack Ruby only deepened suspicions. Could it really have been the work of a lone gunman, or was there something far more sinister at play? The assassination of John F. Kennedy remains one of the greatest mysteries in American history, and in this video, we'll explore the facts, the evidence, and the theories that still spark debate to this day. The assassination of John F. Kennedy. Context, events, and aftermath. The morning of November 22, 1963, began with a sense of optimism. President John F. Kennedy, JFK, had arrived in Dallas, Texas, as part of a 5-city tour through the state, aimed at unifying the fractured Democratic Party before the 1964 presidential election. However, beneath the surface, tensions ran high. Texas was politically divided. While Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, a Texan, had strong support in the state, Kennedy's more liberal policies were unpopular among Southern conservatives. Political climate in Dallas, in particular, had become a center of right-wing hostility toward Kennedy. Just a month before his visit, U.S. Ambassador Adlai Stevenson had been attacked by protesters while giving a speech in the city. Additionally, on the morning of Kennedy's arrival, a local newspaper published a full-page ad accusing him of being a communist sympathizer, further underscoring the hostility in some quarters. Despite these tensions, when Air Force One landed at Love Field at 11:40 a.m., Kennedy was greeted by a large, enthusiastic crowd. The warm reception seemed to dispel concerns about his safety, and he and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, who was making a rare public appearance, smiled and waved as they greeted well-wishers. The motorcade through Dallas at 11:50 a.m. Kennedy, Jacqueline, Texas Governor John Connally, and Connally's wife Nellie entered a Lincoln Continental convertible limousine for a 10-mile motorcade through downtown Dallas. The route had been widely publicized in advance, ensuring thousands of people would gather to see the president. The mood was festive as the motorcade moved through the city. Crowds lined the streets, cheering and waving American flags. At one point, Nellie Connally turned to JFK and remarked, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." Moments later, that optimism turned to tragedy. The assassination, Dealey Plaza, 12:30 p.m. As the motorcade entered Dealey Plaza at 12:30 p.m., shots rang out. The first bullet missed or barely wounded Kennedy. The second bullet struck Kennedy in the upper back, exiting through his throat. The third and fatal shot hit Kennedy in the head, causing catastrophic damage. Governor Connally was also seriously wounded, hit by a separate bullet that went through his back, chest, wrist, and thigh. In the chaos, Secret Service agent Clint Hill rushed to the car, climbing onto the back in an attempt to shield the president and First Lady. However, it was too late. Kennedy slumped forward, mortally wounded. The race to Parkland Hospital. 12:32 p.m., the limousine sped toward Parkland Memorial Hospital, arriving within minutes. Doctors attempted to resuscitate Kennedy, but the damage was too severe. At 1 p.m., John F. Kennedy was pronounced dead at the age of 46. Jacqueline Kennedy, still in her blood-stained pink suit, refused to leave his side. Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin. Shortly after the assassination, authorities identified Lee Harvey Oswald, a 24-year-old former Marine, as the prime suspect. Oswald was seen fleeing the Texas School Book Depository, where he had allegedly fired the shots from the 6th floor. An hour later, he shot and killed Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit before being arrested in a movie theater. Oswald denied any involvement, famously stating, "I'm just a patsy." Before he could stand trial, he was shot and killed by nightclub owner Jack Ruby on live television on November 24, 1963. Aftermath and legacy. The assassination of John F. Kennedy shocked the nation and the world. Americans watched in disbelief as Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as the 36th president aboard Air Force One, with a grief-stricken Jacqueline Kennedy at his side. In 1964, the Warren Commission concluded that Oswald acted alone, but doubts and conspiracy theories have persisted for decades. Many believe there was a larger plot involving the CIA, the Mafia, the Soviet Union, or even factions within the U.S. government. Conclusion: Kennedy's assassination marked a turning point in American history. It symbolized the end of an era of idealism and optimism, and his death continues to be one of the most debated events in modern history. His legacy endures in his policies, his speeches, and the lingering question: was there more to the story than what was officially reported? At 12:30 p.m., as the limousine turned onto Elm Street and entered Dealey Plaza, gunfire shattered the celebration. 3 shots were fired in rapid succession. The first bullet may have missed or only lightly wounded the president, but the second shot struck Kennedy in the upper back, passing through his throat before hitting Governor Connally. The third and fatal shot struck JFK's head, causing catastrophic injuries. The First Lady, in a moment of sheer panic and horror, was seen crawling onto the back of the limousine, seemingly trying to retrieve a piece of her husband's skull. Secret Service agent Clint Hill rushed forward, climbing onto the car to protect the First Lady as the vehicle sped toward Parkland Memorial Hospital. Upon arrival at Parkland, doctors desperately attempted to save the president, but his injuries were too severe. At 1 p.m., John F. Kennedy was pronounced dead. A nation that had just celebrated its young, charismatic leader was now plunged into mourning. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, standing aboard Air Force One beside a blood-stained Jacqueline Kennedy, took the oath of office at 2:39 p.m., officially becoming the 36th President of the United States. In the aftermath, the investigation moved swiftly. Within hours, authorities arrested a suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, an ex-Marine with a history of pro-communist sympathies. The official explanation came from the Warren Commission, a government-appointed panel tasked with investigating the assassination. Their conclusion: Oswald acted alone, firing 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. The commission's findings relied on key evidence, including the famous Zapruder film, a home video capturing the assassination in gruesome detail, the autopsy reports, and a controversial bullet trajectory analysis that led to the infamous single bullet theory. According to this theory, a single bullet struck both Kennedy and Connally, explaining the multiple wounds. But from the very beginning, doubts emerged. Witnesses claimed they heard shots from multiple directions, including the infamous grassy knoll. The bullet trajectory was questioned, and skeptics argued that Oswald, using a bolt-action rifle, could not have fired so quickly and accurately. The controversy deepened just 2 days later, when, while in police custody, Oswald was shot and killed by Dallas nightclub owner Jack Ruby. The official story said it was an act of vengeance, but many believed it was part of a cover-up. The assassination of JFK remains one of the most debated events in American history, with countless theories challenging the official version of events. Lee Harvey Oswald, the man behind the mystery. Lee Harvey Oswald remains one of the most controversial and enigmatic figures in American history. His unstable personality, military background, defection to the Soviet Union, and radical political beliefs have fueled endless speculation about whether he acted alone or was part of a larger conspiracy in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. His life was marked by isolation, resentment, and a search for meaning, a combination that ultimately led him to become the alleged assassin of a U.S. president. Early life and troubled upbringing. Born on October 18, 1939, in New Orleans, Louisiana, Oswald had a chaotic childhood. His father died before he was born, leaving his mother, Marguerite Oswald, to raise him and his two older brothers alone. Their financial struggles forced the family to move frequently, and young Oswald grew up without stability or strong social connections. As a child, Oswald was withdrawn and socially awkward, often described as intelligent but emotionally troubled. Psychological evaluations from his youth suggested he had delusions of grandeur and struggled with anger issues. He dropped out of school at 16 and became increasingly obsessed with Marxist ideology, reading about communism and showing sympathy for the Soviet Union. Military service and defection to the Soviet Union. At 17 years old, Oswald joined the U.S. Marine Corps. He was trained as a sharpshooter, demonstrating above-average accuracy with a rifle. Despite his skills, he had serious disciplinary problems, including unauthorized absences and incidents of insubordination. He was court-martialed twice, once for possessing an illegal firearm, and another time for attacking a superior officer. During his time in the Marines, he began studying Russian, a highly unusual interest for an American serviceman during the Cold War. In 1959, after being discharged, Oswald made a dramatic decision. He defected to the Soviet Union, renouncing his U.S. citizenship and declaring his loyalty to communism. Upon arriving in Moscow, he attempted to gain Soviet citizenship, but Soviet authorities were skeptical of his motives. Instead of granting him citizenship, they sent him to Minsk, Belarus, where he worked in a radio factory. While in the Soviet Union, Oswald became disillusioned with life under communism, finding it just as restrictive as the American system. He had rejected. Married Marina Prusakova, a Russian woman, in 1961. Decided to return to the United States after 2 years, applying for repatriation with his new wife. Oswald's defection and return to the U.S. during the Cold War raised suspicions. While the FBI kept tabs on him, they did not consider him an immediate threat. Returned to the U.S. and radicalization, Oswald and Marina settled in Texas, first in Dallas, then in Fort Worth. He struggled to hold down a job, often clashing with coworkers and displaying erratic behavior. Despite his personal instability, he became deeply involved in politics, but his views were contradictory and unpredictable. He claimed to be a Marxist, supporting communist ideology. At the same time, he attempted to infiltrate right-wing and anti-communist groups, raising suspicions that he might have had intelligence connections. He openly supported Fidel Castro in Cuba, even handing out pro-Castro leaflets in New Orleans. He tried and failed to defect to Cuba, suggesting he wanted to be part of Castro's revolution. Oswald's erratic political behavior made him a person of interest to the FBI, but at the time, they did not see him as a significant threat. The path to November 22, 1963 and October 1963, Oswald got a job at the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas, which overlooked Dealey Plaza, the site where President John F. Kennedy's motorcade would pass on November 22. Just weeks before the assassination, Oswald attempted to assassinate General Edwin Walker, a right-wing anti-communist figure. He fired a shot through Walker's window but missed. This attack demonstrated that he was capable of political violence. On the morning of November 22, Oswald brought a rifle to work, concealed inside a brown paper bag. He positioned himself on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, where he allegedly fired 3 shots at JFK's motorcade, killing the president. Capture and death after the assassination, Oswald fled the scene. An hour later, he shot and killed Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit. He was arrested in a movie theater and taken into police custody. He repeatedly denied involvement, saying, "I'm just a patsy." Before he could stand trial, on November 24, 1963, Oswald was shot and killed by nightclub owner Jack Ruby on live television, fueling speculation that he was silenced to prevent deeper truths from emerging. Did Oswald act alone? The Warren Commission, 1964, concluded that Oswald was a lone gunman. However, this finding remains highly controversial, and many believe Oswald was part of a larger conspiracy involving the CIA, which may have seen Kennedy as a threat to Cold War interests. The Mafia, which was angered by JFK's crackdown on organized crime, anti-Castro Cuban exiles who were furious over Kennedy's handling of the Bay of Pigs invasion. The Soviets, given Oswald's time in the USSR. Even today, no definitive evidence proves or disproves these theories, keeping Oswald's true role in history shrouded in mystery. Conclusionally, Harvey Oswald was a troubled, alienated, and ideologically conflicted figure whose actions changed the course of American history. His defection to the Soviet Union, radical political beliefs, and assassination of JFK make him one of the most debated figures of the 20th century. Whether he was a lone gunman or part of a larger conspiracy, his role in one of America's greatest tragedies remains an enduring mystery. On the day of the assassination, Oswald was allegedly positioned on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, armed with a cheap, bolt-action Mannlicher Carcano rifle. According to the official account, he fired 3 shots, with 1 bullet missing and 2 hitting their targets. The most controversial aspect of the official story was the so-called magic bullet theory, proposed by the Warren Commission. This theory suggested that a single bullet struck President Kennedy in the back, exited through his throat, then proceeded to wound Governor Connally, hitting his rib, shattering his wrist, and lodging in his thigh, all while remaining remarkably intact. Critics found this theory implausible, questioning whether a single bullet could cause such damage and still be recovered in near-pristine condition on Connally's hospital stretcher. 2 days after his arrest, Oswald was being transferred from the Dallas police headquarters to a county jail when, in front of live television cameras, Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner, emerged from the crowd and shot Oswald at point-blank range. The shocking assassination of Oswald only deepened suspicions. Ruby claimed he acted in a moment of rage, seeking justice for Kennedy's murder, but many believed he was silencing Oswald before he could reveal a larger conspiracy. Ruby's connections to organized crime and the FBI only added fuel to the fire, with speculation that he may have been acting on orders from more powerful figures. Despite growing public doubts, the Warren Commission, a government-appointed investigative body led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, concluded in its 1964 report that Oswald acted alone. The commission dismissed the idea of multiple shooters, maintaining that the evidence, ballistics, eyewitness testimony, and Oswald's known movements supported the lone gunman theory. But the report left many questions unanswered, and skepticism over the official explanation persisted. If Oswald acted alone, why did so many witnesses claim to hear gunfire from different directions? Why was he murdered before standing trial? And was it truly possible for a single man to pull off such a precise and deadly attack? These lingering doubts would fuel decades of alternative theories, suggesting that Kennedy's assassination was far more than just the act of a lone, disillusioned gunman. One of the most enduring aspects of John F. Kennedy's assassination is the overwhelming number of conspiracy theories that challenge the official story. Critics argue that the Warren Commission ignored critical evidence and overlooked potential culprits who had strong motives to see JFK eliminated. Among the most discussed theories is CIA involvement, fueled by Kennedy's growing hostility toward the agency. After the botched Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, Kennedy was furious with the CIA, blaming them for misleading him into authorizing the failed attempt to overthrow Fidel Castro. He publicly threatened to dismantle the agency, even stating that he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. Declassified documents later revealed that the CIA had been involved in multiple assassination plots against foreign leaders, including Castro and some researchers. Believe Kennedy himself may have been viewed as a liability. Former CIA operatives, such as E. Howard Hunt, have hinted at agency involvement in the assassination, and files released in recent years suggest that the CIA was monitoring Oswald closely before the shooting, raising the question of whether they allowed the assassination to happen or were actively involved. Another strong theory ties the Mafia to Kennedy's death. JFK's brother, Robert Kennedy, as Attorney General, had been aggressively cracking down on organized crime, despite the fact that mobsters had allegedly helped JFK secure votes in key states during the 1960 election. Figures such as Sam Giancana, Carlos Marcello, and Johnny Roselli reportedly had deep connections to both the CIA and Cuba, and some believe the assassination was payback for the Kennedy administration's betrayal. Notably, Jack Ruby, the man who silenced Oswald, had known ties to the Mafia, leading some to speculate that he was ordered to kill Oswald before he could reveal the truth. FBI files even recorded Mafia figures boasting about their involvement in JFK's murder, but no conclusive evidence was ever found linking them directly to the crime. JFK's stance on Vietnam also made him powerful enemies within the military-industrial complex, a term popularized by President Dwight Eisenhower in his farewell address, warning against unchecked military influence. Kennedy was reportedly considering withdrawing U.S. forces from Vietnam, a move that would have cut into the profits of defense contractors and war profiteers. Documents from 1963 suggest that he planned a phased withdrawal, contradicting the later aggressive escalation under President Lyndon B. Johnson. Some believe that military leaders, defense industry executives, or intelligence officials saw Kennedy as a threat to their long-term objectives and may have conspired to remove him before he could implement his policies. There are also theories suggesting an inside job within the U.S. government and Secret Service. Critics point to unusual lapses in security, such as the change in the Dallas motorcade route, the lack of Secret Service agents riding on the back of JFK's limousine, standard protocol, and the sudden withdrawal of key security personnel just before the shooting. Some eyewitnesses claim to see suspicious figures in Dealey Plaza, including the infamous Umbrella Man, who some believe was signaling to the shooter. Additionally, reports of multiple gunmen, including shots coming from the grassy knoll, contradict the official lone gunman theory. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, which reinvestigated the case in the 1970s, even concluded that there was likely a conspiracy and that Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, though they stopped short of naming specific culprits. Finally, the possibility of Soviet or Cuban involvement remains one of the most debated theories. Oswald had defected to the Soviet Union and lived there for nearly 3 years before returning to the U.S. He also visited the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City just weeks before the assassination, allegedly seeking a visa to flee to Cuba. Given the tension between the U.S. and Cuba following the Cuban Missile Crisis, some speculate that Fidel Castro ordered Kennedy's assassination as retaliation for repeated CIA assassination attempts against him. Similarly, there were fears at the time that the KGB may have trained Oswald or manipulated him into carrying out the attack. However, both Cuba and the Soviet Union strongly denied involvement, knowing that any proven link could have led to nuclear war. The assassination of JFK remains one of the most complex and controversial events in American history. The sheer number of conflicting theories, missing evidence, and unexplained anomalies has kept the mystery alive for decades, leaving the world to wonder, was it really just one man acting alone? Or was Kennedy's death the result of a much larger, more sinister plot? One of the most controversial aspects of JFK's assassination is the magic bullet theory, which forms the foundation of the Warren Commission's conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. According to this theory, a single bullet, fired from Oswald's Mannlicher Carcano rifle on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, struck Kennedy in the upper back, exited through his throat, and then proceeded to hit Texas Governor John Connally, causing 7 wounds in total. The idea that one bullet could pass through multiple layers of bone, muscle, and organs and emerge in relatively good condition has been widely criticized, with skeptics arguing that such a trajectory defies logic and physics. Some forensic analysts and researchers claim that if Oswald was the lone shooter firing from behind, the angle of the bullet's path does not align with where Kennedy and Connally were seated. This led many to believe that additional shots were fired from a different location, possibly from the infamous grassy knoll. The grassy knoll remains one of the most talked-about aspects of the assassination due to numerous eyewitness accounts, suggesting that shots came from that direction. Many onlookers at Dealey Plaza reported hearing gunfire from a fenced area on the hill to the right of the motorcade's path. In the Zapruder film, a home movie that captured the assassination in real time, Kennedy's head appears to jerk backward and to the left, which some forensic experts argue is consistent with a frontal gunshot, contradicting the official claim that Oswald fired from behind. Additionally, a police officer and several witnesses ran towards the grassy knoll immediately after the shots, convinced that they had heard gunfire from that location. However, the Warren Commission dismissed these testimonies, insisting that acoustic evidence did not support the presence of another shooter. Decades later, in 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations reviewed audio recordings and determined that there was a high probability that a second gunman was present, leading to their conclusion that Kennedy was likely assassinated as part. Further fueling doubts are the autopsy inconsistencies that emerged after Kennedy's body was transported to Bethesda Naval Hospital for examination. The Dallas doctors who initially treated Kennedy at Parkland Memorial Hospital reported a large exit wound in the back of JFK's head, suggesting that he had been shot from the front, contradicting the official narrative. However, the autopsy conducted at Bethesda concluded that the fatal shot had entered from the rear, aligning with the lone gunman theory. There were also reports that Kennedy's brain was removed and later went missing, preventing further analysis of the bullet trajectory. Conflicting descriptions of JFK's wounds, combined with missing medical records and X-rays that allegedly vanished, led to speculation that the autopsy was altered or manipulated to fit the official story. Some believe that the Secret Service took control of the body too quickly after the assassination to ensure that any contradictory evidence was covered up. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the case is the missing and suppressed evidence, which continues to fuel speculation that the full truth has never been revealed. The Warren Commission relied heavily on testimony and evidence that was later called into question, while key witnesses, such as police officers and medical staff, claimed their statements were altered or ignored. Thousands of government documents related to the assassination remain classified, despite repeated calls for full transparency. Some of these files were scheduled for release in 2017, but the U.S. government postponed the full disclosure once again, citing national security concerns. Why would information about an event from 1963 still be considered sensitive? Critics argue that these suppressed documents may contain evidence pointing to a larger conspiracy involving intelligence agencies, organized crime, or foreign governments. The gaps and contradictions in the official story only deepen the mystery surrounding JFK's assassination. From the physics-defying magic bullet to the grassy knoll witnesses, the autopsy anomalies, and the disappearance of critical evidence, the inconsistencies in the case continue to raise questions. Whether due to a deliberate cover-up or a failure of investigation, the unanswered questions leave the door open for endless debate. Was Oswald truly the lone assassin, or was he just the fall guy for a much larger and more sinister plot over the years? The U.S. government has slowly declassified thousands of documents related to JFK's assassination, yet many questions remain unanswered. What do these files reveal, and do they support or debunk conspiracy theories? Some of the most intriguing revelations include CIA and FBI surveillance of Oswald before the assassination, as well as previously classified reports detailing Oswald's visits to the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City just weeks before the shooting. One FBI memo, written the day after the assassination, suggests that J. Edgar Hoover was deeply concerned about the public believing in a conspiracy, which some interpret as evidence that officials sought to control the narrative from the very beginning. Additionally, newly released files point to Operation Northwoods, a Cold War-era plan in which the U.S. military proposed staging false flag terrorist attacks to justify an invasion of Cuba, further fueling speculation that powerful government forces had a motive to remove Kennedy, who opposed direct military intervention. Modern forensic analysis has also shed new light on the case. Advanced ballistics testing and computer simulations have re-examined the trajectory of the bullets, with some researchers concluding that the official account is plausible. Yet others still argue that the physics behind the magic bullet theory remains questionable. Some forensic experts also point to inconsistencies in the Zapruder film, where frame-by-frame analysis has been used to support both lone gunman and multiple shooter theories. Additionally, acoustic studies of police radio transmissions from Dealey Plaza, reviewed in the 1979 House Select Committee on Assassinations report, suggest that at least 4 gunshots were fired, not 3, which would mean a second shooter was present. Public opinion has consistently reflected widespread skepticism. According to polls, a majority of Americans, often over 60%, believe there was a conspiracy behind JFK's assassination, a number that has remained fairly consistent over the decades. The Warren Commission's credibility has been repeatedly questioned, with critics pointing to conflicts of interest, rushed conclusions, and missing evidence as reasons why so many remain doubtful of the official findings. The sheer number of alternative theories, ranging from CIA involvement and Mafia retaliation to Cold War espionage, has ensured that speculation continues to thrive. So, could we ever know the full truth? While more documents are set for release in the coming years, many believe that the most crucial evidence has been lost or deliberately destroyed. If there was indeed a conspiracy, those responsible have long since passed away, taking their secrets with them. However, with modern forensic advancements, artificial intelligence-assisted analysis, and continued public pressure for full disclosure, there remains a possibility that new breakthroughs could emerge. Until then, JFK's assassination remains one of the greatest unresolved mysteries in American history, a puzzle that continues to captivate and divide generations of historians, researchers, and the general public. After examining the official story, conflicting evidence, and decades of conspiracy theories, one thing is clear. The assassination of John F. Kennedy remains one of the most debated events in American history. Was Lee Harvey Oswald truly the lone gunman, or was he just a patsy in a much larger plot? The CIA's secrecy, the Mafia's potential involvement, the military-industrial complex's motives, and even Soviet or Cuban connections have all fueled speculation that there was more to the story than what the Warren Commission concluded. The grassy knoll witnesses, the magic bullet theory, missing autopsy files, and classified government documents continue to leave room for doubt, even as modern forensic science attempts to piece together the truth. Despite the release of new files, some key documents are still withheld, leading many to believe that there are details the public was never meant to know. Could this be because the truth is too shocking? Or was it simply a failure of record-keeping and investigation? Will we ever know the full story? Now we turn the question over to you. Who do you think killed JFK? Was it Oswald acting alone? Or was there a conspiracy at play? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get the discussion going. And if you love diving into history's greatest mysteries, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos on Cold War conspiracies and unsolved events. See you in the next one.